Hello.
Hello? You right?
Hi.
Hello, Rose Wrist. Rose Wrist, everybody.
Hello.
How
Yep.
do we want to do this? Because you're streaming as well, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I am.
Well, do you wanna take charge? Like,
Sure. Yeah, we'll get right into it.
of course.
Okay. Yeah, so hold on, let me just open my I'm just gonna adjust the audio levels a little bit. Um, do you think you could like speak continuously for like 10 seconds just so I can get the audio adjusted?
Speaking continuously for 10 seconds so Rose Wrist can get his audio adjusted. Absolutely. Just keep talking endlessly. It starts getting a bit awkward when someone asks you to speak. So
It does, it
just
does.
really, just really hope that it ends sometimes.
Okay, I think this is good. I think this is
Okay.
good. Okay, chat, put red frogs in chat if the volume's bad. By the way, I think we're good. And I'm good on your end and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And just so people know on my end, no, there'll be no visual effect of Rose Wrist. If you would like, go over to Rose Wrist channel. If one of my mods could pop that in the chat, Rose Wrist, that would be absolutely fantastic. But yeah, thank you. You carry on.
And I'll do the same for you. There we go. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I had a call-in stream like a few weeks ago
Mm.
where somebody came in and they wanted to talk about veganism. And then we had a conversation there and overall I think that conversation was fine, was whatever. And then I saw your comments. You're like, "Hey, I took issues with some of your reasons for not being a vegan. If you want to discuss this, just let me know." And I reached out to you and now we're having this discussion. Since then, I have done a lot of thinking about this, a lot of reflection. I've come to the conclusion that the arguments I made in that debate were not very good. And in my reflection, there was actually a period of time where I was like, "Oh shit, you know what? I might have to become a vegan," given where I was at. And then I thought a bit more, and now I'm at a position which is, I think, way more thought out than it was previously. But I'm not quite at being a vegan, so now it's more formalized, and I'm basically here to bounce my current understanding of this topic like on you, and then you can give your thoughts and we can have a discussion if there is strong or major disagreement on the stuff that I say.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be wonderful. So, if you can, because obviously I have a grasp somewhat of the arguments that you gave. Do you want to
Mhm.
kind of just go with what you may have previously thought before and how that's changed, just so I'm aware of where you're at now?
I think previously I got at my main issue is that, which is that I have trouble finding, because the way I value moral systems is we have a series of kind of like presuppositions that we start from. And then through using those presuppositions, we analyze stuff and we produce a wide range of different expected or desired outcomes with those presuppositions in place. And then we evaluate how good the moral system is based on the agreeableness of those outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue where I was at before is that I had trouble understanding or thinking of a way where I could plug in an inherent care for the suffering of animals or for their moral value without leading to outcomes that I find on the whole more unsatisfactory than the outcomes I had for my current system.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the main thing that kind of made me a bit off. However, I think that my analysis on getting there was a bit poor previously, and I've since developed upon that. And I think I'm at a better state right now. And that is still the major issue I have with like veganism as like a presupposition that you plug into your moral system to come to a conclusion. Um, and I can open up with where I'm at right now then,
Yeah,
and then we can go from there.
absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the kind of position I'm going to be arguing against here is the position, or that I'm not, is the position of an ethical vegan. And I define an ethical vegan as someone who places inherent moral worth on sentient animal well-being or inherent moral consideration of sentient animal suffering. If you feel like this doesn't properly characterize your belief, just let me know. And that's the position I'm not taking. The position that I am taking, and what I think is the best kind of presupposition we can plug into our moral system when it comes to our consideration of animals that leads to the best outcomes, where I'm at right now is that I think that we ought only care about animals insofar as it improves human well-being and human quality of life. Now, does that mean, for instance, that factory farming of animals is a-okay? I would actually say no. I do believe a lot of humans are really, empathetic towards animals. I mean, we have that kind of bond with empathy with them. I have two pets. I not anymore because I moved out, but yeah, I've grown up with animals, so I definitely see that sense of empathy. And I know that I would prefer to live in a world without factory farming and without knowing that this types of animal abuse goes on. So I think we can still get to some of the kind of vegan-y prescriptions and solutions there, but we avoid some of the other pitfalls that come with having like an inherent value of animal well-being, which I can point out during the passing of the debate. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay, absolutely. So the problem I'm seeing here from my vegan view is so you're seeing, okay, well, we should only, value them insofar as it benefiting us. Is that correct? Like human beings?
Yes.
Okay, so what we'd have to establish is a morally relevant difference between them and us. That would mean that the things that we would be willing to do to them would be justified. So because, say, for example, it would benefit humans to exploit them, kill them. Well, I just want to know, there's got to be some sort of morally relevant difference between them and us that would then make that justified. And just to kind of make that clear, just so I'm not being like obtuse or anything, obviously it would benefit humans sometimes to do something harmful to another human. But humans aren't below this threshold whereby, if it would be beneficial to me, then I can justify exploiting and killing them, because there's no morally relevant difference between myself and another human being. So we've got to kind of establish, in my view, this morally relevant difference. So I'm wondering if you have one specifically.
Yeah. So I just have a question before we get into this to see if we're gonna divert too far. Do you believe in objective morality by any chance?
I really struggle, meta ethics and everything like that. Bear with me, I'm quite a smooth brain. I'm torn between the two. It's quite difficult for me to grasp.
All right, no, this is excellent, because we don't have to get into that at all. So
yeah,
that's
no,
okay,
no,
cool.
Please, I'm begging.
Excellent. Then we're all good to go. Okay, cool. Yeah, so fundamentally, where we decide to draw these moral lines are not inherently justifiable. Like, the only way we can say that, okay, this is a good distinction to draw and this is a bad one, is based on kind of the intuitiveness, satisfactoriness of the kind of outcomes it produces. So for me personally, where I draw this line is I draw the line at Homo sapiens as an organism, because I think that, hey, the probability that other humans are experiencing things like me by virtue of being Homo sapien is high enough that I care about protecting that experience. And then there's also another element of like respecting, human rights and stuff like that, which we can get to later. And that's where I choose to draw the line. Now, why do I choose to draw the line at human beings and not at, other sentient creatures? That's completely and utterly arbitrary. And the only reason why I draw the line on human beings is because that's where I see drawing the line will have the best outcomes when it comes to the sort of outputs from our moral system when we run it through a series of problems or conundrums that we can see where there's a conflict between the interests of animals and human beings, for instance. So for me, it's there. It's at Homo sapiens. That's where I draw that kind of moral distinction. I'm like, hey, on Homo sapiens, I value inherently. Other organisms I only value insofar as they contribute to the well-being and the experience of Homo sapiens.
So I think this could be explained in fewer words. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm grasping it, but you're saying, okay, well, I draw it here arbitrarily. Is there kind of a quicker way that this can be explained, just so I can better understand what you're getting at?
I'll try it. I'm just going to say that wherever you draw the line, it's going to be arbitrary, no matter what. I choose to draw the line at Homo sapiens. That's where I think that we are distinct from other animals. And I draw the line there completely arbitrarily because I think that, hey, there's a higher probability that there's a sufficiently high probability that Homo sapiens share the same internal experience of well-being as I do as a Homo sapien than, for example, like a pig.
Okay, so do you believe that when a pig is being stabbed or they're being harmed, or do you think that's a negative experience for them?
Yep.
Okay, so why does it have to be an experience close to yours for it to be relevant enough to not, directly pay for that to occur to them?
So while I undeniably would, really like to have a moral system where we can look at them and be like, hey, this is not okay. And I still kind of get that done a bit under my system. I feel like, valuing all, for example, sentient life by virtue of the fact that they can experience negative things creates like a premise or a presupposition in our moral philosophy, in our moral framework, where we end up with some really weird outcomes later down the line or in potential hypothetical situations that I'm more uncomfortable with than I am uncomfortable with the fact that, pigs can be killed at factory farms, and it isn't like necessarily inherently super duper immoral. So I can give an example of one of those things. just so we can understand it. So let's say that there was a disease that was now like ravaging the human race. It affected human beings. It was relatively quick killing disease. The suffering from it wasn't very massive. And the only way to cure this disease would be to like kind of like genocide and engage in very, very experimental and experiments on the animals in order to extract enough of a given substance that we would need in order to make the cure for us to cure the human beings. Now, as a kind of presupposition for this hypothetical, let's say we knew 100% for a fact that the net sentient suffering experienced by the animals would be greater than that of the human beings. For human beings, they die pretty quickly. It fucking sucks. But the animals are going to be tortured to get these substances to cure the human beings. They're going to suffer more. We know that for a fact. In that situation, I would be uncomfortable with saying that, okay, we shouldn't save these human beings. We shouldn't engage in these types of practices on animals. And I think most people would be there as well.
Absolutely. I can understand why that might be a difficulty, but vegans aren't asking you to choose between humans and other animals.
But what we are asking, a logical conclusion if you care about sentient animal well-being.
Not necessarily, because obviously there are a lot of vegans who believe in the hierarchy of sentience. It isn't what vegans are asking on a baseline level is just for others to not directly contribute to the exploitation and cruelty and killing of those animals. We're not asking choose between the human and the other animals, make a choice, is it a crab that you care more about or give more value, or is it going to be a dog? That's not what the nuances are calling for. All I'm trying to figure out is why, because you're vegetarian, is that correct?
Yeah, I try my best to eat vegetarian for as much as I can, and I do it purely because of the fact that it makes me feel better. Kind of going back to only caring about animals insofar as it helps humans. I only care about that because it makes me feel better to know that I'm not even ever so marginally contributing to a thing that harms animals, and that just makes me feel better, and that's why I value it.
Okay, so yeah, I'm still not understanding because I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but when I do ask a question, then it does follow with like an answer that's quite long, and I think it can be explained in smaller words.
Is it fine if you answer the situation with the animals, the human beings and the medicine that you need to extract from animals? How would you handle that situation? How would you rationalize through it if that's something that humanity was faced with?
So yeah, I think that I'm very newish to philosophy. I think I'm probably quite a threshold deontologist above anything else. Okay. I think it would probably surpass a threshold whereby I'd think, save the humans first. However, luckily in the animal rights context, it does seem as if we have these alternatives available. There's innovation within even vivisection that leads to us having a future where that doesn't even need to be a thing anyway. But I understand, the need for a hypothetical. However,
but why do you want to save the humans there? I need to ask that question.
I think it's probably I'm not fully sold on the hierarchy of sentience. However, it's probably the case that a human, it's difficult because obviously different animals, they can see more colors than we can, they can smell more. Some animals seemingly can process more emotions and feel more. So it's really difficult for me. But I guess it's an intuitive thing at this point where I think, that human can have a greater experience. There maybe be a bigger consequence to them dying. I'm not sure. So it would be really difficult for me to make that decision, but that's probably where I would go with that. However, maybe other vegans would argue differently. Okay. But however, when it comes to I'm having a difficulty understanding the issue still of why you physically just can't, if you recognize, okay, well, the suffering of an individual is bad, why is it only bad to you? So say for example, I slit a cow's throat in front of you. You're only going to feel bad about it or think it's bad because of how it will affect humans? Is that correct?
Yep.
Why is that?
Because I don't see how we can make like a moral obligation to care about the suffering of the cow there that doesn't lead to weird kind of fucky situations like what I talked about with the medicine example, when we consider all the potential like hypotheticals and outcomes of our moral ideology, which I think is something really important. I think that when you make changes to your moral thing, you need to consider the range of hypotheticals, and if there are things that I am deeply uncomfortable with that are a necessary outcome of my moral beliefs, then for me that's a reason enough for me to re-examine and potentially change my moral beliefs.
This sounds to me like a slippery slope fallacy, because a vegan is not asking you to go down this route. A vegan is just asking one to not directly contribute to the exploitation and killing of animals. And this is why I had a problem with your former argument, which I can't help but kind of...
It's a dog shit argument, to be fair. So the one about the highways?
Yeah, it's just that, so you're not committed to that any longer.
It's not because I understand what I was getting at there, but I think that what I'm getting at there is exemplified far better in this example with the medicine, and that's why I'm backing off it. It just feels like there's a lot of potential outs to my previous arguments that don't exist in this one, which is why I developed upon it and developed.
What outs do you believe are there that aren't present in this one?
Because in this one you must necessarily choose between either valuing the human well-being and the suffering caused by this disease, or valuing caring about the animal suffering caused by their genocide and the extracting of the substance needed for the medicine. Whereas in the highway example, you could very much most likely make like a types of like infrastructure and having experts think about, okay, well, what's the best way to care about the animal well-being and to make sure that our building is eco-friendly and doesn't interfere too much with the habitat, building maybe like nature bridges and whatever over highways so that animals can still cross different territories and stuff like that. Like there are so many ways to move around the main crux and issue with the highway example, whereas with this one it's either the humans die.
No, I'm understanding why I'm seeing an issue with both the same one. It's because this isn't an argument that veganism is even like tackling, because the reason I had a problem with that argument was because you were talking about, well, humans consent to having the highways there, but it is the case that there are humans in existence right now who don't have the capacity to consent or understand consequence. So it wasn't even compatible anyway. And yeah, I'm just not understanding. Like, it's really unclear for me still at this point, because obviously, it might be me being smooth-brained. However, I'm just struggling to understand why you are getting to this kind of conclusion that this would lead to all these horrific, or uncomfortable rather, outcomes when vegans aren't asking you, oh, you have to choose between humans and other animals. All we are asking is to not directly, the avoidance of directly contributing to their exploitation and killing. And even in the human context, people may take more consequentialist or utilitarian ideals where they may exploit or even kill some or one to save the many. I think even in the human context that does occur, and I think you could probably say, okay, well, we don't want to kind of consider humans and their experience them as individuals, because then that could lead down this horrific slope where we have to start choosing between humans. This is why this is difficult for me.
Yeah, that's why I value all Homo sapiens back, and that's why I draw the line there. I don't draw the line at different types of humans.
I understand why you're saying, because you get far enough, everything seems to go down this arbitrary path. But you're cutting it at this line where there are other sentient beings who, though they are having a different experience, hang on, let me just ask you this. Why is it bad for an individual human to experience harm, in your view?
There's a lot of reasons why. I mean, similarly to an animal, it's because they're experiencing, or why it's inherently wrong for human beings. Well, because for me specifically, where I give organisms and living creatures more consideration is going to depend on where they fall on that line of where I choose to kind of arbitrarily draw the line of, okay, at this point, their experience is worth protecting. And I simply draw the line at human beings, and I cannot justify that. The best justification I could give is that, hey, if it's a human being, there's a higher probability that I share an experience with them than there is that I share an experience with, for instance, like a pig, as an example. Now, there's still a probability that I share with the pig, although that probability is undeniably lower than that with another Homo sapien and with another human being. And that's why I choose to draw the line.
Yeah, sorry, just if you can repeat just the specific bit, I was just asking for specifically with humans, not to compare it to any other animal right now. Yeah. Just why do you think it's wrong for a human to experience harm, or have it done to them, rather? We'll say have it done to them. Why is it bad, in your view, for just a human to be harmed by someone else?
Yeah, I'll phrase this. This more,
thank you so much.
briefly. Okay. So firstly, it's because the probability that other human being is having a experience similar to me is high enough that I choose to care about it. That's point number one. Point number two is that if we do not respect the well-being and the autonomy of other human beings, that undermines fundamental assumptions and fundamental rules on human rights that can later end up coming to bite me in the ass, which I wouldn't like very much. Those are the two main reasons.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. But this is why this is concerning to me, because, like, nowhere there is the actual, focus on the individual's experience, really. It's kind of more about you as an individual, which, I understand we have our individual interests. However, it is the case, regardless of our absence or presence on this planet, those individuals, we don't need to care about them for them to intrinsically have value. And this is why we probably kind of clash, because I don't need a pig to suffer in the same way I do, or, seemingly experience the same level of pain. It is the case that, put the hand or the hoof or, the paw on the stove of an animal, they are going to pull away. They are not, in basically every scenario going to enjoy that. It's going to be a bad experience for them. And to force that upon another when you could avoid doing so, I just can't see why there's a morally relevant difference between them and us that would suddenly mean, okay, well, for them, that would be absolutely justified to put that upon them.
Yeah, I recognize 100% that it's an arbitrary line, but at the end of the day, my arbitrary line is just as valid as your arbitrary line.
How so?
So what's your line for why we should care about an organism's well-being or suffering?
So there's quite a couple, but mainly
sentience is probably the main one.
Yeah. So sentience, having that experience, being a subject, an individual.
Okay, and why do you care about that?
Multiple reasons. So one, obviously, it sounds somewhat similar in some ways to yourself, where it's like, well, I am an individual experiencing, and I seem to know that pain, suffering, these things are bad, and then well-being, happiness, love are good things, and I understand that, and that others share that commonality through all sentient beings or most sentient beings, at least.
You don't know that, but you're making like a bit of an assumption here.
Well, absolutely not. Like there's data on various animals, even like with cows, for example. There's a really good piece of literature, psychology of cows. They are seen to express things such as emotional contagion. They have we can observe them having very complex expressions of emotion between them and others. So to say, oh, well, I assume that, well, no, they're recognized as sentient, they're recognized as having these feelings. And
yeah, but we don't know if there's, we as human beings, we know what sentience is insofar as we understand it. And we don't know if the sentience we experience is the same as really as another human being experiences to some extent, right? And most certainly not that of like a pig or a cow or whatever. I would just say that, hey, I think human beings are probabilistically likely enough to have a similar sentient experience to me where I choose to care about them, whereas pigs and cows or whatever are past that point.
Well, that seems to work in the vegans' favor because, as you said, we don't even know if a human, and seemingly because, we both wear glasses. I think you wear glasses, right? Sure. Next to somebody who has 20/20 vision, we are having a very different perception just on that alone. We have different thoughts and feelings. So it works in the vegans' favor because it's like, yeah, we're actually having a different experience. And even you say, probabilistically, they're having a similar sort of experience to myself, where there are going to be humans who absolutely are not, and they are still, valuable. And so it's not them having that, the human, you're injecting this, okay, well, they're human, so probabilistically they're going to have a similar experience to my own.
They're more likely than what a pig or a cow is to have the same experience.
That's what's an issue, though, because in some cases you're going to have humans who aren't having that experience, yet, they're being protected as they should be, and
do you think there are humans that are less likely to share an experience with me than a pig.
We'll come back to that in just a moment. But can I just
Okay.
finish it? Yeah. So your humans who probabilistically are not going to be having a similar experience, and then there are going to be pigs who are having a similar experience in the sense that they are having loads of experiences of well-being, love. You know, they have like urges similar to our own. Yeah, I don't understand. Well, you know what this is an issue with as well. Because it's like, what do you mean, like, the experience? What do they have to be, like, an artist like you, or really, really, have feelings for a certain gender? Like, what do we mean by experience?
I mean, that's a highly subjective word, but I would just say that the general experience of consciousness, we can say that.
Okay, so then I can answer the question that you posed to me. Yes, absolutely. Like I literally worked in a hospital for a while. There were people who lacked capacity to the point they were hardly having an experience.
So people that are like in a coma and stuff like that.
Yeah,
instance.
or a coma, or they could have various conditions that meant that they just weren't perceiving the world in the way that, or like a neurotypical person would experience the world. And though, for me, in my kind of view, they're still, being an individual. So they should still be intrinsically valued. And that's why, encompassing also other animals, that's why it's like, well, people don't have to have a same or even similar experience to myself for their experience to matter. Why do I personally get to go, oh, well, your experience is like mine, probably. Therefore, it's not justified to exploit or kill you. But your experience looking at you, I got a pig right here, you seem like you probably are having a different experience from me. So I don't really need to care about you. And
it's exactly equally arbitrary and equally assumptuous. Both of those, where you draw the line.
You do say that, but we could go far and far to get to the point where we do say it's arbitrary. But the problem is,
it definitely. You agree with me though that it's arbitrary.
Well, I think go far enough, and seemingly things just do become arbitrary, and we have these presuppositions. So what's important to me, as far as everyone, as far as I'm understanding, is that we have to be able to get to a point, because how you opened with this, you were like, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember, you were like, well, we want to, have like the best experience, for as many as possible, and
human beings.
Human beings, and we want to have these like outcomes that most agree with. Did you say?
Yeah, that we want to have, when we plug stuff into our moral system, we want to make sure that the outputs of those moral systems are satisfactory and agreeable.
Okay, well, seemingly most people wouldn't find it agreeable to just go up to a cow and just slit their throat.
I agree with you 100%, and that's why I care about animal well-being insofar as it affects other human beings. And the reason why going up to a cow and slitting its throat in front of other people is a negative action is because it adversely affects other human beings.
I'm just still struggling to understand, because do you include all human beings in that, or is it just human beings who probably have a similar experience to you?
Insofar as like who I care about generally?
Yeah. And them being affected by these things happening to others?
I would say all human beings.
All human beings. Well, this is the problem, because
there's some sociopaths, most definitely, but the vast majority of human beings are not sociopaths and psychopaths.
Well, you've said the reason that you draw the line at the human beings, correct me if I'm wrong again, is because...
It was two reasons.
2 reasons, but one of them primarily was because they are probably having a similar experience to you. But when pointed out that they aren't having that similar experience, you're still, you're still encompassing them. And I'm trying to understand why you don't just also include the other animals.
Because the reason why I don't include the other animals is because I am uncomfortable by potential outcomes, like, for example, the medicine example, if I choose to include.
But how would being vegan and avoiding the direct contribution to the exploitation and killing of those animals lead to that sort of conclusion potentially happening?
So the point of hypotheticals aren't necessarily like, oh, this is something that's like going to happen.
Oh no!
Exactly.
To be clear,
Okay.
I completely understand the need for a hypothetical, and it's important. However, it's got to be analogous. It's got to be something that the the counter person is actually calling for that being even potentially something that could happen. I'm trying to understand how it's even like remotely, relevant to what I'm asking. I'm just asking, okay, why are you, directly contributing to the exploitation and killing of animals when you could avoid doing so? And I'm trying to work out how that, if you did and others did decide to go vegan, would even lead to that in the first place, as even being an analogous hypothetical.
For instance, I'm in favor of a lot of more vegetarian and vegan legislation, 100%, both from an environmental perspective, both from the perspective that I would imagine that more people are more comfortable and more happier to be living in a world where they know that there aren't chickens being shoved into massive like funnels with like saws and shit at the bottom, for them to get chopped up in or whatever. I think that that's the case. And I think that, in order to weigh the scales and get more human beings to prefer a world without meat, but you also don't have the animal suffering, would be to make vegan alternatives, more vegetarian alternatives more approachable, just better quality overall, more things that human beings are like, okay, you know what, hey, I'm cool with this. I would now prefer to live in a world where we don't have all this other torturing of animals taking place, because it's going to make us as human beings just feel worse, just generally.
I don't know how sorry, I'm sorry if I'm not following, but I don't know if that, like, how would that lead? Just because you said, as far as I'm concerned, in that.
Okay, how would that lead to what precisely?
So you've said the vegan alternatives you're in favor of. You've given this hypothetical. You're like, the reason that you are choosing not to go vegan is because you're uncomfortable with certain outcomes it could lead to. I'm just asking you.
No, hold on. So when you say going vegan, do you mean plugging in an inherent moral valuing of sentient animal well-being, or do you mean eating more vegan and vegetarian shit?
Well, if going vegan, that would not mean eating more vegan stuff. Obviously, veganism.
So you're talking about behavior, you're talking about action then, yeah?
Well, yeah, I mean, moreover, probably right now, just kind of behavior. I'm not really asking you, because there are people who don't give a damn about other animals and that they are vegan. I've literally got them in my chat right now. They don't experience really empathy for animals and they don't see the need. Because, so I'm just asking, actually vegan, avoiding products that you consume via, your mouth or, other means.
So you asked me, how does my philosophy lead to me being vegan?
No, I'm asking, how would you going vegan lead to this potential that you're uncomfortable with?
Me doing it isn't going to lead to outcomes.
Sorry.
The reason
let me clarify. Yeah, as I said, I did say this before, but yeah, how would the world going vegan, people being vegan, how would that lead?
It depends on why they're vegan. It depends on why they're engaging in those practices. If they engage in those practices for similar reasons that I am, if they're engaging it because, hey, they are like less comfortable living in a world where there's animal torture and stuff getting place because it makes them feel worse, if they want to go vegan or vegetarian because of environmental reasons or whatever, then that's totally fine. However, I think that depending on your reasoning, for instance, if you are going vegan based on the fact that you place an inherent moral value on sentient animal well-being, then that moral framework will lead to a series of disagreeable outcomes should we potentially be facing a situation where the needs of a human being and an animal are in conflict with one another. And I avoid that completely with my moral thing, with my philosophy, because humans take priority no matter what. But I also lead to a lot of the things that I perceive as positive with the vegan and vegetarian movements, which is, reduction of the negative feelings humans experience on the basis of all this shit that happens with, animals in factory farming and environmental benefits and yada, yada, yada.
Okay, but this is the issue. I think this is a complete misframing of what veganism is. Veganism isn't asking you to necessarily categorically consider all sentient beings as equal. It's just asking you to not directly...
To place inherent moral value on their well-being.
Yeah, you can place inherent moral value without necessarily putting them in the precise same equality. That is a possibility. So I think you're misframing what veganism is.
So then I have a few interesting ways to because I gave you the example of the ethical vegan in the beginning, which is, I can rephrase it now. Someone who places inherent moral value on sentient animal well-being or inherent moral consideration of sentient animal suffering. So then in that case, where you have the medicine thing going on and the animal population, you knew for sure that the suffering of those animals is more intense than that of human beings. Would you still say that the human beings take precedence over that in that situation?
Oh, so yeah, sorry, this might be a fundamentally misunderstanding. So if an individual was to have like more of an experience, actually, then, you know, I
What do
would.
you mean by more of an experience?
So you're
Because
saying
what
they.
it seems like you're doing here is you're implying a
Oh, no,
qualitative
wait. No,
difference
wait.
between
Sorry. I'm just
human
trying to
being
No,
well-being
I'm
and
not trying
animal
to do
well-being.
anything. I'm just trying to you're just talking a bit fast. Like, you're talking quicker than I am, like, and I'm a quick
Okay,
talker.
my
So,
bad.
yeah. So what is the difference? Sorry, that they're going to experience more suffering.
Yeah, I can actually, I just realized something. We can go way simpler than this. Okay. So when it comes to, I'm asking you about now your moral philosophy and your moral like presupposition. So you,
Haven't
to
we already
some
been through
extent,
this? Sorry, I already addressed this,
yeah,
didn't
I
I?
think, but we
Yeah.
kind of skipped past a few things that I wanted to mention. So now we're
Yeah.
going
Right.
to drill down that a little bit. So, you, to some extent, value sentient animal well-being inherently, right?
I value, yeah, animals inherently, like,
Okay.
intrinsically. I believe that they are valuable as an individual. Yeah.
Do you value all animals the same?
As I said beforehand, yeah, I'm not really yet fully committed to either or, but I think there's probably a hierarchy of sentience. So no.
Okay. So when you say talk about a hierarchy of sentience, that implies that there is a qualitative difference between. I assume humans will be at the top of that sentience ladder, yeah.
I think so.
So that implies some form of qualitative difference between the sentience of human beings and that of other animals, correct?
Absolutely, but that's why we
And
need to
that's where I choose to draw
establish.
my line.
Well, no, this is why we established why there's a morally relevant difference that would justify the exploitation and killing of them. Because so they've got to, you know, it can be the case that, say, for example, someone could say, oh, in a burning building, you know, either they've got to save me or they've got to save a baby. And they could think, oh, well, you know, they could go one of two ways and think, well, I'm going to have like a, you know, more of an experience, probably going to know what's going on and be more afraid and know I'm going to die. And that's going to be even worse, you know, various reasons. Okay, so we've got two different humans. However, neither of us would be beneath this threshold whereby it would be justified to exploit and kill either of us.
I understand 100% what you're saying. And I'm saying that when it comes to the animals, I think that there is a line that I feel comfortable drawing there, because I never want to end up in a situation where humans are adversely affected because we choose to place more value on sentient animal well-being.
Isn't it the case that because we choose to place moral worth on humans, that there are uncomfortable situations that do also involve other humans?
Yeah, but I could probably deal with those, and they don't necessarily have to do with vegan ethics very much.
Okay, so do you notice how when I then talk about like animals, other animals, there's this problem that is also identifiable in the human context. However, it doesn't suddenly mean that,
I've given you, that's not something that's hard for me to deal with.
Well,
I can deal with that super easily. Like,
okay.
the reasons why I care about all Homo sapiens blanket is, number one, on the basis of probability, but also number two, on the basis of the fundamental kind of principles and human rights things that we seek to uphold as a rule in society, that you ought not treat a human in this negative way, no matter what. And I think that keeping that standard, keeping that rule, and keeping its sanctity and integrity is extraordinarily important for well-being. And that's why I choose to value that so much. And that kind of falls on top of human beings. Whereas I don't think that the same rule applies to animals in the same sense.
However, you have acknowledged that there is probability in this case, but there are going to be instances where humans cannot, you know, reciprocate these rights. They cannot understand these rights. They are not having even a remotely similar experience to you. However, you still value them insofar as...
I still think the probability that these people are having an experience similar to mine is higher than that of a pig, for instance. I would still say that. And I would also say that, once again, that doesn't give us the excuse to just blanket like fucking torture these people, because then you're violating the general like rules of human rights and stuff like that, which I think are very important to retain the sanctity of.
Okay, so yeah, we're going down like multiple routes, but it is the case that we could measure that like a pig could probably have a more similar experience to you than another human, by proxy of the fact that some humans, you know, as we were talking about, like comatose, they are not, you know.
So I can deal with the comatose example. So we can go one by one here.
Hang on, we've gone like 1,000 places. So I'm struggling to think of where we even go from here, because there's a lot of issues that we've run into where it seems...
I don't think I've run into a single issue where I've been unable to answer a question. I asked you that question about the medicine thing in the beginning, you weren't able to answer that because you had
hang
work
on,
out
hang on.
your, like, hierarchy thing.
I absolutely answered the question.
Okay, so what would you do then in that situation where you have the medicine versus
twice now?
Yeah,
No?
but you didn't give a proper answer. So maybe I misremembered. Maybe I forgot. So can you answer that question again? So we know that the overall the aggregate suffering to sentient beings is going to be higher in the animal population than for the human population. What do you do? What do you do?
As I said beforehand, my intuition, I'm like, oh, I should probably save the humans. However, the issue that we are having time and time again is that this isn't an issue with veganism, because even in the
how you're not answering the question.
No, I literally just answered it.
You said you have an intuition, but you don't have any justifications for that. Well, you just say that I think I would do this.
This is answering the question. So justification. I don't think this is the problem. If you have two examples where you have to kill one to save the other, I don't know if I can even necessarily say it would be justified. What I'm asking for in veganism is for you actively to kill neither. That is all I'm asking for. And I'm still struggling to understand why this would lead to a path where you have to it's really difficult now, we're going to have to kill some to save the other, because even in the human context we can deal with this.
For you to have a justification to protect animal well-being in the way that a lot of vegans do so right now, you fundamentally need some degree of a presupposition of inherent value and sentiment animal well-being that leads to potentially situations like I described there with the medicine thing. And I'm uncomfortable with that outcome, and therefore I have to amend my priors. I have to amend my presuppositions.
But again, that happens even in the human context, as I already said.
Yeah, but I can answer those questions. I can morally justify why I would do certain things in certain cases. Yes. I can say, for example,
I'm not asking, whether or not, suddenly you can justify. I'm saying you can justify it in both. However, when it comes to veganism, you're saying, well, I won't go vegan because it could lead to these tricky issues that make me uncomfortable. However, there does already exist in the human context issues that you probably are uncomfortable with that you could then justify, but that doesn't suddenly mean then you think, okay, well then I will continue directly contributing to the exploitation, the rights violations of those humans.
But you haven't given me a reason to care about that.
Why do I need to give you a reason to care about somebody in order to not violate their rights? That is concerning.
Because that's how morality works. You need to give justifications for why you ought or ought not to do things. That's
how we were talking about you were talking about sociopaths earlier. Someone doesn't have to individually care about an individual in order to not actively directly contribute to their rights violations.
Yeah, and I can justify why that person. So if I hate an individual, if I hate a person, I really don't fucking like them, I can still provide a justification for why I still ought not kill that person.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. There's an inconsistency here. Because
No, but there's a justification there. There is a reasoning there.
What's the justification? Because I thought it was arbitrary before.
Okay, so just because I draw an arbitrary line at what I choose to care about doesn't mean that, working with that arbitrary line as a presupposition, I can't work from that in order to have good outcomes. So for instance, if you ask me about so let's say I'm really pissed off. I really hate a person. I don't like them. I think that I would be better off if they were dead. So how does this factor into my moral equation? Okay, number one, I ought not kill this person because it undermines the general safety that people have in the communities around them, which is going to undermine human well-being to a great extent. Reason number one. Reason number two, just because I may not personally like somebody doesn't mean that that person's experience isn't worth protecting. Number two, I can give explanations, I can give reasonings for why I believe the things that I do.
You could give them to animals as well, though, like other animals.
You could give that justifications, but those justifications have to be agreeable then to the other person. But
this is the issue. There's a complete inconsistency here, and I hate to say this, I think you're just saying, well, this is arbitrary because you're not going as far as you could. And it just I know in philosophy talk, it's this is arbitrary is where the conversation seems to end.
Because if I go farther, I'm going to have to end up dealing with hypothetical situations like that about medicine.
That's why I don't go farther. But we've already established that you have to deal with those even in the...
let's go from that. Hang on, you said intuitively you protect the human being.
Right, hang on. We've already established, though, though in the human context that already exists, and you that leads to uncomfortable situations. You can justify those, but then when I turn it around and go, oh, okay, but for the animals though, you go, well, I draw the line at human, and that's just arbitrary. This is an inconsistency, 100%.
No, it's not. It's not an inconsistency.
Please
whatsoever.
explain how.
Okay, this is, and so you're saying that, okay, I can find, it's not, the reason it's uncomfortable is not because it's hard to answer. It's because I'm logically committed to an answer that I'm uncomfortable with. I don't see how if I care about the inherent moral value of sentient animal well-being, I don't see how I can ever be logically or morally justified in saying that, in saying that we should, wait, hold on. I don't know how I could be justified in saying that we should save the humans in that situation. I don't see how I could do that.
Well, let me like just make this clear. This is why I'm seeing an inconsistency. Because say, for example, in the medicine example, it was all humans. Those were the only animals in this context. You would be committed to making
two equal groups of humans.
Yeah, and you would have to pick something because that's where you're putting me. So
okay, I can answer that question. I can answer that super easily, and I'm not uncomfortable with the answer. So the answer here is if there's okay, we can make it exactly identical, but I think making it exactly identical will actually make it easier for me. So if I make it exactly identical, it's going to be that, okay, exactly identical. So we have two human populations. One of them has a disease and they're going to die a relatively quick and painless death, and the other one is going to have to be kind of like tortured and genocide in order to get the substances needed to save the other population. And also knowing that the aggregate suffering experienced by one of these groups is going to objectively outweigh the other. For me, it's very simple. We do not kill those other people. We'll let those other die from diseases. Okay, and the reasons for that is that by doing that, then number one, we're still upholding the fundamental presupposition of human rights. So we don't just fucking round people up and torture them. Number two, their well-being and the aggregate experience that they're going to have is going to be more valuable than that of the people that are going to be dying, because the people that are going to have to be tortured is going to experience more negativity than that of those that are going to be dying. I can answer this super simply. This is an uncomfortable situation.
Exactly. So notice how you can answer that, right? And it might not lead uncomfortably.
But note how I provided justifications.
But exactly, this is where the problem.
But when I asked you that question, you just said intuitively, this is what feels right, but you didn't justify your answer.
Well, no, Rose, because this is you're just throwing back at me the problem that you did with the whole arbitrary thing. Because as soon as it becomes about other animals, you go, oh well, it's I can't go vegan because it would lead to these uncomfortable, conclusions where I'd have to pick one over the other. So in this situation,
where I would have to pick the animals over humans, and I categorically I feel uncomfortable with doing that.
So
I never want a moral system that does that.
Well, in this example where you have to let somebody suffer, you have to force that upon someone else. You've picked someone to suffer. Yet you haven't then thought, that's why, because I have to deal with this, I'm not comfortable, or I have to make this choice. That's why I will continue contributing to rights violations of humans. But in the animal context, But
I'm not contributing to rights violations of humans in this situation.
Exactly.
But
if there was a choice where we could level, so we've put that in the same sort of analogous context. In an analogous context, I highly doubt, or I hope, that if there were a system whereby there was a direct rights violation right in front of you that you could avoid of human beings, that you would go, okay, yeah, I'm gonna pick that.
But you haven't given me a reason for me to care about animal well-being as much as human well-being.
But no,
that's the reason why.
Rose, I'm not asking you to care about, again, you're mischaracterizing.
You need to.
No. You're mischaracterizing veganism yet again. I'm not asking you to care about them on an equal footing. I'm asking you to care about them insofar, or not necessarily care, just consider them insofar as you don't directly participate in their rights violations when you could avoid doing so.
Depends on the reasons for doing. Okay, hold on. What you just said, I already conceded that at the very beginning. What you said, when you can avoid doing so.
Well, that's what veganism is.
Well, that's what I said at the very beginning. I said that, hey, I think that there are definitely situations where both my moral philosophy leads to the same outcomes as some of the vegan ones do when it comes to action that is taken. And I'm fine with that. I'm comfortable with that. However, if I use the vegan rationale and the vegan justification, then I also commit myself to a set of other things that I'm not comfortable with. Well, so for instance, when we talk about the thing of like, when it doesn't cost us anything, when we might as well not, I said at the very beginning that like, hey, if I would prefer a world where we don't have like animals being tortured in, factory farming situations, and we have other food alternatives, because I think it leads to an aggregate increase in human well-being, because I think it feels better. And no, for sure, it would feel better for me if we knew that there weren't animals being tortured en masse in society in our food production process.
I just want to make completely clear, okay, there are many different vegans who, for many different reasons, are vegan, but the established definition is that it's the avoidance of animal products and exploitation where possible and
now
practical.
You're talking about behaviors.
Yeah. Well, this is where I want to go, because obviously I have to cut it down quite soon because it's been like 50 minutes. But this is where I think there's an avoidance of discussing directly your personal participation in these issues, because I don't think we're going to come to an agreement. Like, I'm seeing a fundamental misunderstanding and mischaracterization of veganism on your part, and it seems to be because you're injecting this assumed way that a vegan is thinking and approaching veganism. And I that's not my framework that you're even attacking. It's not veganism that you're attacking. You're just kind of seemingly targeting the specific kind of motivation that someone might have for being vegan.
I'm targeting what I stated at the very beginning of this debate to avoid this. I said, in this debate, I'm going to be arguing against the ethical vegan position, which is someone who places inherent moral worth on sentient animal well-being or inherent moral consideration of sentient animal suffering. I said that in the very beginning, and that's what I've been doing.
I mean, you can do that without having it on this equal footing that even leads to these problems. So, and I think I have
but you, no, you haven't.
Okay, so, Rose, I don't think, because obviously we've been, prying at it, and maybe we can kind of go through it again, like once I've thought it through a bit more. Maybe that's an issue where I'm just fundamentally misunderstanding a word that you're saying. But I think what we should kind of move on to is your personal participation, because you said beforehand, well, me going vegan wouldn't lead to these problems. So I'm just interested in why personally, when you have this, you say, oh, I don't, personally like what happens to these animals as a result of these products. Why personally are you not vegan?
Okay, so I'm gonna write this. So I'm gonna write this down. If you are uncomfortable with outcomes of non-vegan behavior, why are you not vegan? Okay, so I have that written down now, so we're not going to forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. Always best. I should write more down.
Yeah, no worries. I just want to, before we move on for this, I have one more thing, because I still feel like even from the very beginning, I was not given a satisfactory answer for this. So we went through the situation with the medicine and the animal population. You said you would save the human beings. What's your justification? What's your logic? What's your morals for saving the human beings?
Well, I'm confused as to why we're even addressing this in the first place, because again, I've already established that veganism, it doesn't even lead to this problem in the first place.
You just don't know how to answer this question.
No.
That's the only thing I can take.
Can I finish what I'm saying, or no? Is that right? You haven't heard what I'm going to say. Yeah. Secondly, I answered this question multiple times. And intuitively, as I said, I think it would lead to the human beings, because as I said, I think I said it once, that I believe that human beings are probably having more of an experience and the hierarchy of sentience. That's what I did indeed answer with. And that's why we went through that whole conversation about sentience being something that's important, and that there's this different experience. And then I said, okay, well, people don't have to be on equal footing with other animals in order for animals not to, also be within a threshold where if they fall underneath, now it's justified to exploit and kill them. So I did answer this, and I don't know why you're so sure I didn't, because I will go back and I'll cut every bit that I said, and I know I absolutely did address those things. Maybe I just delusionally said that.
Now I know, because the first time I asked you this, you were like, some vegans use a pyramid of
hierarchy of sentience. Yeah.
And that's what. When you say that, it doesn't sound like this is what I believe. This is my. It sounds like here's a potential answer people give.
I physically remember myself saying I'm not fully sure if I'm committed to this position, but I do believe probably in the hierarchy of sentience. I did say that. I probably verbatim I said those words.
Okay, perfect.
I'm just trying to be honest that I'm not fully sure of it, because it is quite a difficult discussion within the vegan community. So I did answer, absolutely. I will not be told I didn't. I know I did. Absolutely.
All right. So you then need to recognize, both of us, you arbitrarily value human experience that much more, to the point where you would easily say, hey, we gotta save the humans.
Not easily, and I did also say it would be really difficult for me to do that.
What if it's like, yeah, okay.
Why are we harping on this when it isn't even it's not even part of what is even being asked?
I think it's pretty important, but that's okay. So
we can harp on it for 8 hours at one point if you want.
I think considering the the logical implications of one's moral philosophy, I think that's a pretty important thing to do. And really like getting into the nitty gritty of it. Maybe that's just me personally, but that's something I think. So I'm gonna get to your question now.
Just to be clear, like if I can address it. I've just got a really busy week. I spent the worst time trying to like schedule everything. So if you want, we could go through this like as long as you want another time. I'd be really happy to do so. But I didn't want to like cancel on you.
Yeah, no worries. So we'll get to your other question then.
Yeah.
If you're uncomfortable with the outcomes of non-vegan behavior, why are you not vegan? So to be perfectly clear, I am uncomfortable with animal abuse and stuff like that insofar as it adversely affects other humans' experiences. And when it comes to my personal behavior, it's going to be how badly it adversely affects my experiences. So for the most part, I feel better about myself. My experience, my well-being is higher when I go to the store and I buy vegan alternatives to the things I consume than when I don't do so. However, in some situations, and like a minority of situations, I feel like, hey, my personal well-being is improved more if I'm out with friends and I get this non-vegan, non-vegetarian meal. But yeah, and then I feel like, okay, overall, then my well-being is improved. Whereas for the most part, I feel that like, hey, if I can avoid non-vegan and non-vegetarian alternatives, it's going to make me feel better. So it's all literally just what makes me feel better in any given instance.
Do you think that everybody should hold this value where they just will do things that make them feel better insofar as they see like an overall benefit for others that probably, are having a similar experience to them? And if they maybe aren't, then it seems unlikely maybe they can kick them out of this arbitrary threshold and then do their bidding on those individuals. Like this just sounds
I'm not sure what if that was a question.
I guess it's kind of a rhetorical question because if held consistently, that just sounds like it could lead to some pretty horrific outcomes.
Give me then a hypothetical situation that I would not be able to grapple with.
Okay, so somebody personally doesn't care about another human and they are probably not having a similar experience to them, i.e. they have a cognitive condition whereby they're experiencing the world very differently, or maybe they're comatose, something like that. Therefore, they decide that
a person who draws the arbitrary line, like not on the other party in this situation.
So just allow me to finish. And so say, for example, this person, they would derive, it would make them feel a lot better to actually just kill this person and do horrific things to their body. Then they drew it arbitrarily because it's all just, arbitrary. And they stop here and go, well, it's only, for me, it's humans, but only humans who are, probably
who are white,
having the same.
We can do racism. We can say, oh, I only care about humans that are white. That's where I draw my arbitrary line. Because I'm more similar overall to
I guess so, yeah. And
that draw the line anywhere, yeah.
I mean, people do, don't they? Which is horrendous.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely.
And, when, upon having these arguments, they can't justify it any further than this kind of like arbitrary, well, this is where I just draw it. They're just different to me for these reasons. And so, therefore, it'd be justified for them, perhaps?
Yeah, I can answer this question.
Well, I think I know how you're going to answer this. However,
Okay, so then why did you ask me the question?
Well, because maybe I'm wrong, but
okay. Yeah. So I can give you my answer then. So the way I would work, if I met with a person or a situation in which this occurs, then I would say easily, then from my moral position and from my moral philosophy, I would say that what they're doing there is immoral based on where I draw the line. Now, for them personally, because I don't believe there's such a thing as objective morality, they may have a moral system where them doing that is morally justifiable. I disagree with them. I think they're wrong. I think their morals are dog shit. But for them, that might be the moral thing, but I would seek to punish them given my moral system. I mean, that's how we do morals.
Okay, so
for me, I would deem that to be incorrect.
Why
but
would
I don't think any one of us are objectively more correct than the other because I don't believe in objective morality.
I don't think you necessarily have to believe in objective morality to think, okay, well, this one would lead to worse outcomes than the other. For me, I think, okay, well, that would be wrong because that would lead to rights violations of another individual. Clearly as, and it's like, oh well, one's not more wrong than the other. No, one is very much more wrong.
From your and my perspective on moral philosophy.
However, why then do they end up getting punished? Why would you seek to have them punished because they don't agree with you?
Society disagrees with them. Yeah.
Well, okay, say in a society where if you want to use kind of let's
if the majority of society say for example, or homophobic, for example.
Yeah, like homophobic. Let's go there. I'm a lesbian. I feel more comfortable with this hypothetical.
Yeah, we'll go there.
the majority of the population are indeed lesbians. Wonderful. I love that. The minority are heterosexual. So actually, it would be in the majority's favour, just say, for example, that we violate the rights of the heterosexuals. So actually, the majority then kind of agree, oh, well, we don't actually want them around. They're not lesbians. So let's violate their rights. Well, the issue would be really difficult here in your framework because the majority...
No, it really wouldn't be. I can very easily say that from my moral perspective, I think they are wrong. I think they're incorrect. From their moral perspective, they might be correct, but from mine, they're incorrect.
However, it would probably, in this worldview, lead to more positive outcomes to just violate the rights of those heterosexuals. So
well, I would, and here is where you would get into an argument between the two moral philosophies. So I would say that, like, hey, fundamentally, if you're doing these things to heterosexuals, but at the end of the day, there's no objective reason for why I'm more correct than the other person. But I would appeal to things like, okay, hey, we're all like both, just because we might have different sexual preferences, both of us are like overall human beings. There's no reason why you should value their experience less than the others. And I think that by, you doing this, genociding straight people or whatever, through you doing this, you're undermining the sanctity of like human rights and human well-being overall. And therefore you ought not to do it. And I can give those arguments. And if they find those satisfactory, then hopefully they change their moral beliefs into one that more closely aligns with mine. But if they don't, I mean,
then death to the heterosexuals, I guess.
I mean, from their system, sure. But I would fight them. That, I mean, like if there's like, if someone has a different moral philosophy and they're doing a thing that I, under my moral system, I think is disgusting, then I would have to go up in arms against that if I believe that to be a sufficient violation.
So you don't think
this is just so
you don't think either systems are like one's clearly more wrong than the other, like your system where that doesn't
from my
happen.
perspective, one is clearly more wrong than the other. 100%.
Okay, well, this is what's probably an issue, and this is why I kind of I have trouble when it comes to like objective morality and everything like that, because there is, say if the majority population did deem it acceptable to kill heterosexuals, that would lead to more rights violations, and that's why I think my view leads, the vegan view leads to, well, I'm one of the vegan views, leads to better outcomes, because it seeks to see that and be like, well, that would be wrong, because regardless of whether or not they're heterosexuals, they are an individual.
Would be wrong. Do you realize what you said there? You said from the vegan philosophy, from the vegan, and I agree with you. From that, it would be wrong. Well, from my moral philosophy, it would be wrong, 100%. But I think I don't see how this undermines my position whatsoever.
Okay, yeah. Well, to just make this clear, the reason that I brought all of this up is because you appealed to the popularity, not necessarily fallaciously, but you appealed to popularity and this would lead to...
Not in whether or not it's right or not. That's not how I appeal to popularity.
But when we were talking about, like how we deal with like animals, and you're interested in what's good for, the majority of people, you said that like at the beginning, and, we talked about that. Well, that's the problem. Well, when we are looking at what the majority would actually be happy with and would lead to better well-being, well, in this instance the lesbians would be happy with the heterosexuals having their rights violated. Well, this leads to a problem. So this is why
and then from my moral system, I would say that that's still wrong, because heterosexuals, they still, believe it or not, they still fall on the human side of the arbitrary line, and that's why I would still be able to argue against that perfectly fine. I wouldn't have any issue arguing against this lesbian supremacy state. This poses no difficulty to me.
Well, to be clear, like the issue here is that, well, we don't even have to have this system where, okay, you're vegan and this leads to like negative outcomes for the majority of people. And I do have to, as I said, it needs to be about an hour. Well, we've gone like slightly over, but I feel like we need to revisit this. But maybe there just needs to be, like a little break, and because you said there was things that I didn't say. I'd like to look back and just see whether or not I actually said them. I swear.
I can say very simply, I didn't give the impression that I was given a justification for your answer to the medicine question. When I asked you again, then I felt like I got the impression. Maybe I missed something beforehand. I don't know.
I will clip it specifically for you. You can see each time, and then I'll be like,
maybe. But at the end of the day, I don't know why that's...
Obviously, this is in real time. It's quite difficult to hear everything. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know why that's terribly relevant at all, actually.
Well, because I want to look back and see if I actually said those things, because it's really important. If you're saying I haven't said things, I just want to make sure that like I actually have said those, I actually have addressed those.
But I'm fully admitted I could be.
Yeah.
I got the impression that when you talked about the sentience hierarchy thing, it was just like kind of like some people would answer it this way, but I'm not sure where I'm at, which I don't feel, because the issue is that you answered the question. You said I would protect the humans, but then you were a bit fluffy on like why you would do that. If you would have said, I don't know how I would answer this because I'm not sure to what extent
you said you got the impression and you don't even remember what I said. This is the problem. This is why I want to go back and see specifically what I said, because my chat's telling me I said these things. And unfortunately, I don't know if you do like chat replays, but people tell me I haven't said things and I look back and I literally did. And I just, I feel like I'm being told I didn't say and I just want to look back and see if I actually did. So I don't know if you want to like revisit and maybe go through the things again, and I can actually commit more time to, because sorry that I'm having to rush at the minute. But yeah, I really appreciate, going through this, and I'd like to go through it, like hash it out even further, and it might be better to have some time to revisit if that's all right with you.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
just let me know.
Let you know. Yeah, I should be free like probably like next week or whatever, and but yeah, busy week. But no, I appreciate you talk about veganism quite a lot. Is that correct? Because you did kind of say in the video that I watched where you were like, "Oh, veganism comes up quite a bit on this channel."
No, it comes up every time there's a viewer call-in stream, which is like once a month. There's always at least one view, and that's kind of like a tradition. Like whenever there's a viewer call-in, there's. I haven't had the abortion one, which tends to come up a lot for other streamers, but I always have at least one person calling in about vegan stuff, and that was kind of like what I was mentioning.
Oh, I don't
talk about vegan stuff generally. I have like two vegan videos, and it's like one of them you've already seen. The other one is a 2-minute clip of
I've seen one of them, absolutely. The long one. But yeah, there's loads of people in my chat who'd probably really want to talk to you about this as well.
By the way, I'm going to say this: if anyone wants to like pick up right now where we're leaving off, just come over to if you go to my website roserisk.com, there's a link to my Discord on the website. You can join there. You can join the Stream Q voice channel, then I can bring you in and I can talk to you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, there's probably quite a few people who'd really like to do that. So yeah, that's awesome. Unfortunately, I don't really use Discord anymore, otherwise I would have come in, so thank you for using Zoom for me.
Yeah, no worries. All
right, well, yeah, we'll revisit this, see where we're at, and thank you. I appreciate you chatting with me.
Yeah, no worries. It was a fun conversation.
All right, thank you very much. I'll put your link in the chat so people can go over if need be, and I'll speak to you soon, Rose.
Yep, bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye. Right, let's pull out. Cut the quit Zoom. There we are. Yeah, end meeting for all. There we go. Right, so what was that? Roserisk.com. Go get him. Wait, is that brigading? He said I could do that. All right. Roserisk.com. Go over there. If I just felt like I didn't really want to say it because obviously, but I felt like I was being gaslit a little bit. Like, I swear I was saying things and we were coming back to it as if I hadn't addressed it. And yeah, I don't know what happened there. So yeah, I'll have to pick it back up again, revisit. I literally read out I said the basic definition of veganism like multiple times. I should have seen it at the start because he did say, oh, well, I'm going to tackle ethical veganism, which is this. And I thought, well, okay, you can understand what veganism is while kind of rewording it like that, but I didn't realize he actually perhaps doesn't actually know what the definition is.
They need the basic definition of veganism, possible and practicable to avoid cruelty and exploitation of animals.
Yeah, thank you, Marley. I did end up going through that. It's just the assumption that somebody knows something, do you know what I mean? But yeah, that's quite frustrating. I feel like I answered questions. There was only one time where I paused a question to kind of hash something out and then went back. Yeah, I feel like I was being gaslit because I literally said things, and I get this really weird feeling on stream when someone's like, oh yeah, I told you, you're not answering this, and it's like he kept saying it as if I literally didn't, and that was concerning to me. I literally remember, I've had to train myself to really try and remember the things I've said because I've got caught out multiple times where I've ended up
Have a pint on me, you earned it.
Thank you so much, David Ryan. I really appreciate that. Salad behaviour. Thank you. A pint. Hardly drink, but, you know. But I could.
Non-vegan leftists and their nonsensical malarkey.
Yeah, yet again. Episode 2.
If Rose only intrinsically cares about the well-being of Homo sapiens, would that mean he'd be willing to torture infinite Homo neanderthalensis for a trivial net benefit to Homo sapiens? Seems like a way worse ethical implication than his virus argument.
Yeah, I just don't